Note-taking for consecutive interpreting. Hello, my name is David Violet. I am a conference interpreter and trainer in the San Francisco, California area. Today I'd like to talk to you about our practice sessions. We have weekly practice sessions, and I'm going to cover now some basic material to help to make that practice as helpful as possible. I know that your goal is to have your clients be amazed, to see that you are doing amazing consecutive with notes, that you can do many minutes, 8 to 10 minutes or more, get all the names, numbers, figures, the intention, the fine points, etc. And you want them to have you back. You want to acquire the level of skill that will make it possible for you to say, as a Brit once said to me at the European Parliament, "I think you said that better than I did." Maybe that's happened to you somewhere. You want to be in high demand because you are known for your beautiful consecutive, and you want to be able to charge the top price, and they will pay because your clients know that you are quality, and you want to be able to have the quality that makes it possible for you to get more days per year, more income every year for your family. So let's take a look at how we acquire these skills. First, I'm going to talk about two things today. First, the method. What actually happens when we interpret? This is something I think we really need to be able to understand throughout the whole process, because when we analyze our strong points and our weak points, when we are giving feedback to a colleague and when we are receiving feedback, being able to place it properly in this chain of events that takes place in order to interpret will help you to pinpoint strong and weak points and how to improve. So that's why we're going to go on to part two, which is the practice cycle, which is actually how I learned to be an interpreter and how I learned to do good consecutive with notes back in the 80s in Paris at AZIT a long time ago. So the method is the following. Most of our clients and people who are not interpreters, they think, right, when we hear the word table, we just say table, maybe if we're going into French. And they think that we have some kind of a bilingual dictionary in our minds, right? But that's not the case. We, as interpreters, know that when we hear table, we first think about, well, what is it this time? Is it this thing with 4 feet and this wooden thing that is known as a table where you put things this time, or is it something else? If it is, okay, we can probably say table or something similar. Sometimes, though, the word might come up and it's in a different context, and we have to take a look, okay, what does it mean this time? So we're looking at the meaning, of course, and then we find the right way to say it, which might be déposer ou présenter in French. So this is what I mean by the method. We go through our understanding, and then on the basis of that understanding, in the first case, an actual wooden table, in the second case, a figurative meaning of the word table, we actually take that meaning and express it in the target language. So that's basically the method. Now, how does that work when we are taking notes? Well, we have two phases. In red, we have you listen to the original, and then you have deliver the interpretation after the person gives you a time to do so. During the listening phase, what we do is we listen to something like what we saw earlier, a table, and we form an idea of what that means. That is what we do first before we write anything. Then, number two, we decide on what to write. We write some kind of note on the page, which will remind us of the meaning that we just heard. So obviously we would have different notes if it was the wooden table, as opposed to if it were the table in the figurative sense, to table emotion. So we would have different notes, and our notes need to reflect the meaning, not the original form, not the original words. And then moving on to the interpretation phase, we will look at our notes, and that will remind us of the meaning. We can see that under remember, we see that it goes to the light bulb. In other words, we remember the meaning. We see the notes, and it reminds us of the meaning, and then we express that meaning in the target language, as we saw in the 3 cases with the table. So that is for the theory. Now, let's go on to the actual practice cycle. I'd like to say that it takes place, well, there's 4 phases. First of all, listen to something with a colleague. What you need to do, and that's what we do in our practices, you listen to something together. And then you do an interpretation. This may be into another language, or it may be back into the same language. It doesn't matter. It's the same process, because what you're doing is taking in the meaning. In this practice, you'll be writing down notes, and then on the basis of your notes, you'll be giving back that meaning in the target language. If it's the same language as the source language, it's okay. It's basically the same process. And then 3, you will receive feedback from your colleague. This is crucial. Feedback is a fundamental component of deliberate practice, which is the procedure by which you take feedback, whether it's from that colleague, from a recording device or a camera or something else, maybe a professor. You take feedback, you conclude what are your strong and weak points, and then you devise exercises to strengthen your weak points, because you will only be as good as the weak link in this chain of events necessary to do consecutive with notes. And then number 4, you will use that feedback in the way I just described. You will probably emphasize this weak aspect in your practice with your colleague, and it might be here during our practices, or you might devise exercises to do on your own to strengthen those weak points. So let's take a look first at the fact that this is something that is a long-term commitment. I am going to be assuming that you are going to be doing 2-hour sessions with a colleague. You'll be doing these sessions about 3 times a week, and you'll do that over a period of about 8 months. That is what it took for me to get on close to a professional level in consecutive with notes. Here is a sort of a program that I would outline for you that shows you have several months, going from 1 to 8 months. The first 2 months are going to be very simple. I want you to do very simple things. Daily stories about my vacation, my trip to the grocery store, things like that. And you will take probably no notes at all, none, or just numbering of major points for the first month. And your objective is listening discipline. And in other words, no matter what happens on the page, you continue to listen the way you normally do. The second month, it will be similar, but you'll be moving in a little bit deeper. You'll do pieces that are a little bit longer, 3 to 5 minutes, and you'll start working with more variety, not just a trip to the grocery store or my vacation in Mexico or something, but something a little bit more involved. But again, your main objective will be to maintain your listening discipline. And then for the next 3 to 8 months, that is from month 3 to month 8, you'll be increasing from 4 to 8 minutes. Generally speaking, we do say 5 minutes. That's probably a good goal. And you'll be getting more and more complex in the subject matter. So economics, history, technology, all the IT stuff, all of the things you hear in the news, basically all of the things that you could come across. Don't make it too difficult, but you will need to work a little bit on some things that are challenging with statistics, numbers, and a high register of expression. So, formal speeches a little bit towards the end of that period. But during the whole time, really, your focus is going to be on this listening discipline. In other words, you need to be listening without fail all the way through, no matter what is happening on the page. Looking at number 1, you will be listening with a colleague, and here I'm giving you some places where you can get some places to find speeches. Every one of these buttons here goes to a site where interpreters are making recordings for each other. And these are good. These are good practice pieces, although they're a little bit too hard for the first month or 2. But they are, first of all, they're not read. You never want to practice with anything that is read, except in the last phases when you're getting to be pretty good. Generally speaking, just use something that's spoken off the cuff. Use this QR code here to go to that website, my website actually, that page, or you can actually, that's wrong, it's not in the chat. I will put it in the description below in this YouTube video. So this is the first phase. You listen to something with a colleague. And then second, you do an interpretation. This would be, in our practices, it's back into English. And what I want you to do is use the Facebook group that I have, and you'll also find the link for that, and a LinkedIn group that I have, and you'll find the link for that also in the description below. And use those, or find some other way to find practice partners with whom you can practice your specific language, going from English to your specific language, or between two other languages not involving English, whatever your A and B will be. An A language is your mother tongue, a B language is an active language that you will be going into. So you do the interpretation and have your colleague write notes about your interpretation, and you will do the same thing for her when it's her turn to do an interpretation. Always record yourself. Okay, maybe not always. You want to do a lot of volume, so you may not have time to listen to all of them, but please record yourself on a regular basis and listen to it. Really, it's very important. You can, as I was saying, in the end, you will be going from, as the arrows indicate here, either from A to B and from B to A. So I have an English A, a French B, and I have a Portuguese and a Spanish C. So I would go from English to French, French to English, and from Portuguese to English and Spanish to English. But as I was saying, in our practices, and this is what Seleskovich used to do back in the 80s with what we were calling the rare languages, she would have them go from French to French. And what we will be doing here is going from English to English. Point number 3, you will receive feedback from your colleague. And also during this phase, you may be the one who is giving feedback. And I want to give you a prescription. And this is probably the most important part of this video, or close to it, because I really want our practices to follow something close to this formula for giving feedback. And this is what I learned from Danica Seleskovich at AZIT in the 80s. You might say that it's a bit old, but I think it still holds true. First, number 1, give an overall evaluation. You're going to check, is the person actually using a good method? And that basically means the method we talked about at the beginning, that you hear table, you think, okay, what does it mean this time? And then you express whatever that meaning is naturally and accurately and faithfully in the target language. And you're not going from one word to the other, transliterating. You're actually going through the meaning all the way through. Also, this point on overall evaluation will cover the delivery. Was it smooth? Was it convincing? Did you sound confident that this is actually what the speaker was saying, etc.? And is it effective? Will people really be getting the content, the substance of the speech? And then actually we will zero in on the substance. To me, the substance is everything that the source language audience got from the speaker. So all of the facts, figures, names, the logic, the whole argument, but also the tone, the purpose, the style, everything that the the humor, the descriptions, everything that the source language people received from the speaker, you want to deliver that, and that is what we are calling substance. So on this topic of feedback, first you'll give an overall evaluation. Second, you will go point by point about things that you found were either wrong or missing. And let me tell you something quite important at this point. Please remember, try to note down what your colleague actually said during her interpretation, because it's not really fair to say, I don't remember what you said, but it didn't really sound right. It's much better, okay, you can do that if it's all you have, but it's much better to write down verbatim. I heard you say, 1975. But I heard 1965, for example. Okay, so you want to be able to tell the person what he or she said in the interpretation. That's so that that person can make use of this critique. So please do try to zero in on what was said when you plan to raise this as feedback for the interpreter when you are giving feedback to that interpreter. And when it comes to the form, that is when you will give recommendations and feedback on the actual language used. When we say form, I'm referring mainly to the words, the terms, the terminology, and this is a good point if you are a mother tongue, in the delivery language, the target language. This is an opportunity for you to give your colleague, if it's a B for that person, some good recommendations about the best way to say things. Or you can brainstorm together and find out the best way to say specific things. So that's for the form. It's a matter of language. I would like to recommend to you this video. Please go and find this video. You can use the QR code there to find it, and I will also send it to you by email. It explains what I'm saying now a little bit more in detail about how to give good feedback. And you can find it in the description below if you are watching this on YouTube. And then 4, use that feedback. This is so important. How are you going to use the feedback when it's time to improve your interpreting? Well, the whole idea is to listen to the feedback, and over many repetitions, you should start noticing problems or tendencies. In any case, with each instance, you should try to find out what went wrong and what might be the remedy for it next time. So you have various things to examine in this chain of events that takes place. First of all, when you are listening to the speech, do you have some weak point in the source language? Or maybe when you were listening, you suspended listening, or you lost a bit of your focus at one point or another. You didn't have that strong intention, that constant listening effort. Or perhaps you didn't really understand, you didn't take time, or didn't have the reflex to really dig in your mind and to analyze what is going on, what is meant. And then your problem may also be in the decision on what to write and how to write it. And then we move on to the performance stage of your interpretation. Did you have trouble reading your notes? Why is it? Were they not legible? Were they in the wrong place on the page, etc.? Were you having trouble remembering? If you had trouble remembering, it's probably because you were not listening enough, basically. Is your delivery smooth, credible, pleasant, and fast? It should be done in less time than the original. Do you have trouble expressing yourself? Are there problems with your word choice? Do you have a broad enough vocabulary, and perhaps matters of pronunciation? This is just a short list of the challenge areas that you may identify and may want to find exercises for to improve. Here is that very same list, but it's written across the top. And I recommend that you take a look at each of these items below here and see how you're doing. You know, when we learn anything, learning how to drive a car, we learn about the brakes, the signals, about the steering wheel, about the law, what's a legal turn, etc. And the same thing here. We need to bring these things to a conscious level in order to improve them. So, for example, in the source language here, are we having a problem with vocabulary? Are we familiar with common idioms? Do we have difficulties with specific accents, etc.? So we will have many things here. During our listening phase, are we even, and that is keeping the listening equally concentrated all the way through, etc. So there are many things here. I will be sending you this actual spreadsheet so that you can take a look at these various things And in the spreadsheet, you're able to take notes on what you think your weak points may be. And that's where you will be able to find that spreadsheet. And there's also this YouTube video that I made a while back about how to implement deliberate practice in consecutive interpreting. And you can use this QR code. Down in the description below, you will find a link to this YouTube channel. Now, if you really want to get the lowdown, there's an idiom for you. If you really want to cover this more completely, and I highly recommend that you do, take this course that I offer. It's a pre-recorded course on note-taking for consecutive interpreting. You can find it using that QR code. It's a course that is 20 modules long. It's about 5 hours of video, a quiz after pretty much all those 20 modules, and many, many exercises, over 25 exercises. You can take the course online at your own pace, and it's available to you as the purchaser in principle forever. You can watch it over and over again as long as the platform exists. You'll be able to take it, and you can download the videos also if you want. So you can just have it available to you forever that way. And it has a 30-day money-back guarantee. If for any reason at all you're not satisfied within 30 days, just tell me and you will get your money back. So that is the end. I wanted to just tell you how we will be practicing. We'll be practicing right now every Friday and Saturday, New York time. It will be Friday at 9 p.m., that's 2100, and Saturday at noon, 12 o'clock noon. We'll be having our practices, and this is actually going to be starting in February, this February 4th and 5th. So thank you very much, and I will see you in practice.